If you have a website, post on social media, create videos, or are at all active online, you need to consider digital accessibility. Ensuring everyone can access your online content isn't just the right thing to do, it's legally required. In today's episode, we'll be diving into common mistakes and how to fix them. But first, a word from our sponsor.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
But you're on the clock and in the office.
Don't risk reaching for a flask. Instead, crack open a Cubicle Cocktail, the latest and greatest alcohol-free mocktail created to take the edge off without the fear of getting fired.
We have something for every palate and pay range.
Brown ales,
Margaritas,
PT Old Fashions,
strawberry duskeries.
So the next time you're thirsty and craving a swig, reach for a Cubicle Cocktail. Your dependents will thank you.
Cubicle Cocktails. Drink up, hunker down.
Welcome to Almost Productive, a podcast mostly about marketing.
I'm Sean.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Addie. And we're all marketing professionals at New Boston Creative Group in Manhattan, Kansas. All right, well, I don't know about you two, but I could use a margarita right about now.
Always.
Very nice.
Always.
And since we're talking about the internet today, to kind of get us started, instead of our usual would you rather questions, I thought we would be a little bit more topical. So my question to you all today is, what's one website you would not want to live without? Or phrased slightly differently, what's a website that you would be most sad to see disappear?
Yeah, that's tough.
I mean, Google.
Well, no, that
seems
does
like a no-brainer.
Sorry, I'm going to veto that answer. It has to be a non-search engine website.
Okay.
YouTube.
I keep thinking of productivity ones, like an
I
email.
think that's not, that's probably also not fair to say YouTube, but.
YouTube is slightly better.
Yeah.
It's slightly better. Like, that's a little bit more telling about your internet habits than just Google at large.
Right.
But
yeah, at least you know I'm watching something.
who knows what?
Right.
Hey, I'm curious. I'm trying to learn things.
Right.
I'm sorry, Julie. I didn't mean to malign you. Sean, is there a specific, if you could give me a specific YouTube channel, then I would accept that as an answer.
Okay. Thank you.
New Boston Creative Group.
You're right. Yeah. NewBostonCreativeGroup.com. If that website goes down, I'm going to be real sad.
That would be a bummer. Excluding work activities.
Okay.
One website that you'd be sad. I'll go first since this is kind of a tricky one. I'm going with the New York Times puzzles. I do them every day, and I would be so upset not to be able to do the connections and the Wordle and the strands and the crossword, all of those things. So that would be kind of devastating to me in my morning routine.
That's a good one. I'll say that. Me too.
These questions, I always try so hard and they go off the rails every time.
Every time, yeah. That you just you're like, no, this time we're doing this type of question and it'll be great.
I think it's tough because there's so many websites. It's such a stupid thing to say.
Well, I'm also thinking apps.
Yeah. But like, if this website goes down, there's like a clone of it. It's like, oh, I would just use this one. So what's one that's like core that it would be like, yeah, we're going to actually lose something if this one isn't there anymore.
Yes. And actually, that might be an interesting way to frame it too. Like the one, for me, nothing scratches that itch, like doing puzzles like the New York Times. Obviously, there are others out there that exist. So what's the most irreplaceable?
Right.
The one where I view my paycheck?
Right. Let's see. Yeah. Commercebank.com, Capital One.
H&RBlock.com.
Yeah.
Do your taxes.
You two are
We're
exhausting.
terrible at this. I know.
I'm really trying. Yeah, I got nothing.
I feel like YouTube was
Okay.
my best guess at this, but it still feels cheap, and I apologize.
Okay, well, I will accept your written apologies at the end of this episode. So if you could just get working on those, the two of you.
Wait, I can
For
give
this.
a YouTube channel.
I
can
would
do
like
that.
a YouTube channel.
Okay, NPR Music, Tiny Desk Concerts. I don't know where I'd be without them. And I learned recently my brother does not care for them. And I was like, what's wrong with you?
Why does he
Like,
not
what's
care
not
for them?
love?
And this is a diversion, but yeah, why would he not care for them?
Because he's a monster?
Because
I
like
mean,
I get
that's-
that like maybe you're like, oh, those are fine, or like whatever, but to actively not be like, I don't like those is an interesting take.
Right. Or like, I didn't like this band.
Mhm.
Okay,
Sure.
fine. That's your
Right.
prerogative. But yeah.
Does he not
like,
like, live, semi-acoustic versions of songs? Like maybe it's not, he likes the original music. He doesn't like this version of it.
He doesn't like joy or freedom. That's
That
all
makes
I
sense.
think.
That makes sense.
But yeah, that would be a channel that I've had that on play quite a lot recently.
Beautiful answer, Julie. Thank you.
Phew, got it.
You passed. Sean, do you have a YouTube channel?
I watch a lot of YouTube. So picking one channel again is difficult because I just have a backup for that channel, just lined right up.
Sure. Okay. How about category of video?
Yeah, I'll go with one of my later hobbies is chess. So I watch a lot of chess content. So I would be sad to see that go because that is sort of a newfound thing that I've enjoyed.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it was like pulling teeth, but we got there. So I appreciate the two of you opening up about that terribly difficult question.
I like,
And we
think I
wonder
would
why
learn my
our
lesson.
episodes
Yeah.
are 3 hours long.
yeah, I like that these
So-
are getting harder for us. Like these questions, we're really having to think hard. We've gotten through all the easy
Oh.
stuff.
It's true. I'll do my best to revert back to our old would you rather format the next time to make things easier, but we'll see. I just really like these. Well, I don't know if fun is the word, but I really like these questions. But it's fine. It's going to be great. That'll make for a nice, loose, entertaining episode about website accessibility. So, woohoo! Which actually is a very important topic. So yes, as I mentioned in the intro today, we are talking about website accessibility. So to start, I thought I would just kind of say what that means. So define that. And basically, web accessibility is ensuring everything on the internet can be consumed by anyone, no matter their ability level. So whether you're creating a website or a YouTube video for Sean to watch or anything else, everything should be made so those with disabilities are able to use and consume that content. So let's walk through some of the most common mistakes, what those look like, and the remedies, starting with websites. And Sean, since this is your area of expertise, I'll be leaning on you a little bit more than normal this episode. So get ready, stretch a little bit.
No
you
problem.
Might be talking
I
a
got
lot.
it.
Beautiful. And I thought we'd go through some of the mistakes, and I will ask Sean to kind of define them. And then Julie and I, as lay people, can ask some follow-up questions about what that might look like in the solutions. So the first one I have here is poor keyboard access. What does that mean?
So this is, you can imagine users who cannot operate a mouse or a trackpad in a normal fashion will use a keyboard to navigate the website. So using primarily like the tab key to cycle through different options on the website, clicking enter to actually make a selection. So everything they do has to be navigatable through the keyboard on the website.
Beautiful. Is that something that if someone is just starting on Wix, let's say, that Wix will automatically do for them? Or is that something that would require extra coding?
A lot of the services like Wix will have that built in. So when you're building your website using their tools, that it should operate normally. And there's probably not a lot you can do to fix that since it is their system to sort of control. But if you're doing anything custom, then that's definitely going to be an area you want to test to make sure that still operates and that you didn't code something in a way that then breaks that functionality.
Awesome. And then how would someone go about actually testing for that? So if I've never tried to use a keyboard or navigate a website in that way, how can I make sure that my website is accessible?
A lot of times it's as easy as like just don't use your mouse and actually try to use your keyboard, number one, to see how easy or difficult that is to actually to work on the website. There are also, I think, additional tools and services that people with these disabilities may use, and then you can also try those. So things you can download and operate. A lot of times, it's never just like the one thing. It's tied up into other things. So accessibility can cross different, it's not just making sure the keyboard works, it's making sure the keyboard works plus this sort of thing, which we'll probably talk more about as you go on.
Awesome. Thank you. I really like that idea. I mean, I'm thinking that I should go do that with some of our websites, like just try to use the keyboard to kind of see what that looks like, see what that process is and how difficult or easy that could be. I like that.
Right. Because you can imagine also, there's going to be settings on your computer and within the browser as well that help with the accessibility. So it's not I think it can be difficult to set up the perfect situation for yourself because you're not going to know what all the exact settings are going to be, but there's going to be additional things to at least look for, as opposed to just using the keyboard right off the bat, because your computer won't be set up in a way that most people's would be with that disability.
I also think of that sometimes for my own use as shortcuts, like tabbing through a form on a website and expecting it to go, where I want it to. And sometimes I've seen websites where it goes out of order or it takes you off of a form field to another part of the page.
Yes, exactly.
Great example, Julie. Thank you. And the next one I have here for website accessibility mistakes is missing descriptive text on images and videos. Could you explain a little bit what that means?
So this would be for people with different visual impairments who literally cannot see the images, the graphic, whatever, the video, whatever it may be on the website, having the text that can at least describe whatever content they're missing from that image. A lot of times some images are purely decorative, and so there are separate settings to let people know, like, this image does not need to be described because I just wanted to put a pretty flower on this website. You don't need the descriptive text to tell the user there's a flower there because it has nothing to do with the context of the page. But if there's any actual content that you want people to get from that graphic or image, you want to make sure there's description there so that those people are also sort of receiving that information.
Gotcha. So how long about should those be? Is there a kind of standard practice for how many words, or is that as long or as short as
long as they're as short as necessary? So it can be very long if it is necessary to actually get all the content out of the image. If it was that important that it was there, put that text into the actual description for that image.
Like an infographic versus a photo. Like you might describe more completely some of the data or what a chart is showing.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that we've talked about that a little bit on our own New Boston website, like the pros and cons of having a PDF or just a graphic as an image, like the graph that's nicely designed versus embedding that within the website. And maybe that has something to do with that.
Right. And the other thing to think about is this text will most likely be read to the user because they have a visual impairment. So they're not reading the text. It's going to be read to them. And so having that in your mind of, okay, that's how this user is going to be receiving this information. It's going to be told to them. So thinking about that and how you describe it.
Beautiful. So our last one for website specific errors is unordered headings and HTML structure.
So this plays into some of the things we've already talked about, keyboard navigation and visual impairment, where the page is going to be read to a user. Having the page be in the right order so that when you do tab through it, that goes in the order that it makes logical sense to, so that the user isn't bouncing around in a way that doesn't make sense, like Julie's point, where it's going from a form to something else and back. And then if the page is being read, you want all the content to be read in the logical order for them to be able to understand what's going through on that page.
Amazing. And the next section that I have is more about the internet at large and social media accounts and videos that we produce. Are there any other common mistakes that we'd like to go over or kind of touch on that are very website specific before we move on?
One that we deal with a lot is color blindness. I think is one that is easy to overlook when you're designing and building pages to ensure that the colors that you use work together in a way, and mostly this is text on top of backgrounds. So making sure the contrast between the text and the background is such that anyone at any level of visual impairment, this could also just be, people with glasses, but also color blindness, if you're using different colors, that the contrast is enough that they can discern the text from the background. Because a lot of times you'll do something that maybe you can actually see fine and can be read, but the moment that gets sort of translated into someone who maybe has like a red-green color blindness, that just disappears. And it's very common. And there's lots of tools within your design programs or online where you can actually, it'll turn all the colors into, simulated versions. So you can see like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work. Or it'll change it. It'll tell you the actual like contrast values and let you know like this isn't high enough to meet the threshold that will pass sort of the, as you mentioned, sort of the legal status of like this is something that can be accessible to all users.
Awesome. And that's actually a perfect transition into our next section because I'd included that under like social media stuff as well, because this doesn't just pertain to website design. This is really everything that anyone produces online. So that could be a social media graphic, it could be a digital flyer, anything that exists on the internet. And I even noticed, I only have glasses, but I noticed that often with social media graphics, people will just load up a background that's kind of dark with maybe a dark text and it's all fuzzy. And it's really hard to read, which is kind of surprising to me too, because I'm a little bit like, are you not trying to read your own graphic? Is this easy for you to read? I don't know, but that's kind of a pet peeve of mine.
Right. I think sometimes us as designers, we get a little too like, oh yeah, this is, this subtlety and the adjustment of the colors just, yeah, maybe it's a little hard to read, but like the vibes are better.
I once stopped following someone on Instagram because of the font they used. Like, I was just like, my life is too short to try to take that extra split second to figure out what you want me to read. If you're going to make it hard, I'm outie, bud.
Exactly. Well, and that's, kind of like as I mentioned in the intro as well, this is the right thing to do and it is the legal thing to do, but it's also good for business. You want everyone out there to be able to read and consume all of the things that you're producing. So just, whether or not you have to sacrifice the tiniest little bit of design, I don't know. But in most instances, I think that you can make things look equally, if not better, as beautiful and then legible for people, which is the important thing. So since we touched on low color contrast as part of website and social media, I just have one more bullet under the social media and video category, and that is missing video captions. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. We could all understand and realize why video captions would be so important. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the tools that are embedded and available for free on platforms like Meta and ask the two of you, do you use those? Do you think they should be used? Can you just kind of trust them blindly? Or what are some best practices with those?
I think we should have producer Nick chime in here.
Producer Nick?
I think they're pretty good. I think you can get into the weeds of like, do you want your certain proper nouns to be spelled correctly or have uppercase versus, the autocorrect doesn't know exactly what you're saying. Here's an example. There's a company that we worked with a Cool Careers. Its name is Foresite, Foresite. The auto-generated captions doesn't know how to spell it. So like if you're wanting to put out the correct information that way, then I would suggest doing it. I don't think it takes too much time now. There's a lot of software to be able to like help speed up that process. I think for the most part, the auto-generated captions are good. I think they've come a long way. But yeah, if you really want to like put out the correct information, then take a little bit of time to type up those captions yourself.
I think if you do that too, you can kind of make sure like the look and feel is to your advantage. Does it align with the brand and that sort of thing? It's a minor thing, but what we're used to seeing for closed captioning is, black bar, white text, and you can add your own captions and style them differently if you want.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people slur the words in your video. Auto-generated maybe will not pick up the correct train of thought. And so it's good to have, I've done it plenty of times, like it just doesn't make any sense what it's saying. And I think generally, like as you're watching the video, like you can understand what it's, I think, trying to, like the idea it's trying to get across. But I don't know, I guess to be more clear, somebody can be there to actually like put out the correct train of thought. So, sometimes just things get lost within those like auto-generated systems.
Yeah. As someone who is a user, from my standpoint, even bad auto captions are better than none at times, because it can't help pick out like, okay, maybe I didn't catch that word, but I knew what he said there, but it typed in something different, but I get it. And so it's better than nothing in a lot of cases, and is very helpful even if it's not perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you, producer Nick, for chiming in there. I appreciate it. I think that answered that question. And same question to Julie and Sean. That was my last bullet for the social media, just kind of general internet guidelines at large. Is there anything else that you think we should touch on before we wrap that up?
One other one I thought of is the accessibility of, in this case, I'm thinking of websites, but it applies to other things, but across devices. So when you're building a website, you're thinking about this website works on someone's computer, it works on someone's laptop, it works on someone's phone, it works on someone's tablet. Like it has to work across multiple devices to make sure it's accessible to the most amount of users. And so for websites, that's called responsive design, allowing your website to adapt to the various devices. And that also flows into, say, the images potentially that are on your website, how that image scales on someone's computer versus their phone. It's going to look different. It's going to be, obviously, it's going to be smaller. So has that affect what's in the image, if it's a graph or an infographic, and other things about how you structure your website. How is all that going to scale and look on someone's phone is something to consider.
And I would add talk to text and text to talk for people who can't read. That can be really valuable because how else do you go to the internet if you don't know how to spell, if you can't read? It's a really challenging place to be, but a lot of devices have that functionality built in.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. I think that was a great conversation. And as always, if any listeners need help making their website a more accessible place or their social media content more accessible and readable, we know where they can go. To New Boston Creative Group. That'd be great. Hit us up. I hope this makes the internet a slightly more friendly place for everybody. And to end, I have one joke that's not really a joke, but kind of. So here we go. Why did the web developer go broke? Because he used up all his cash.
Ah, good.
Relatable.
Oh, producer Nick is putting a thumbs down, but I thought that one was delightful.
The famous accessibility thing that I like to throw out to people is the Domino's Pizza Tracker. When it first came out, it wasn't accessible, and they got for for it.
Oh,
What was
there
the
you go. Legal
problem with it?
I don't quite remember. I think it was just that, for people who are like visually impaired, you couldn't track your pizza, because it just didn't work that way. Where, I think it was the way it was built was probably in some JavaScript app or something that, it could not describe what the status was. I think it was purely like some, visual fancy coding that we were doing at the time, and it just wasn't accessible. And so, I don't know. This is back probably in the early 2000s. It's probably been a while since that happened. And I think Target also hasn't had an issue. But the pizza tracker is the funny one, at least.
Man, yeah, that's crazy. That it feels crazy that such a large company could forget to do something that feels kind of simple. I guess early 2000s, maybe not, but it just feels very like
it was very
of
much
course
in the
we do that.
early days of that sort of thing, and accessibility wasn't. It's like everything else. Like, it's the last thing that people start to think about when something new comes along, and so it's one of the first examples and lessons that people hear about when that happens.
That's so interesting, man. Crazy. Thank you for listening to this episode of Almost Productive. Before we go, we'd like to give a shout out to our producers Nick and Molly, who work behind the scenes to make this podcast possible. If you'd like to learn more about what we do at New Boston Creative Group, you can reach us at newbostoncreative.com. You can also follow us on social media at New Boston Creative on Instagram and New Boston Creative Group on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you like this episode, please like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your friends. And if you didn't like the show, feel free to recommend us to your enemies. Tune in next time for more office shenanigans, thoughts on trending topics, and marketing-adjacent insights. Until next time, we hope you have a productive day.
Now we're waving.
Now, goodbye.